everybody's talking about AI. AI wouldn't have happened without the power compute that we have these days available on the cloud.
What I saw as I progressed in my career is in IT, the benefits of cloud very quickly, particularly from when data became such an asset for organisations.
To be able to excel in research, I believe it is so important that we can continuously experiment, and to be able to provide that platform at the level and scale to be able to do that and safeguard that, we could only do that through the cloud environments.
Hello and welcome to the Common Factor Series episode, Cloud and Infrastructure. Today we're being joined in the studio by Roberto Calero, who's a Cloud Operations Manager at Blackwood, Kristin Auld, who's the Chief Technology Officer at the Australian Federal Police, and Nivedita Newar, who is the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer at the University of New South Wales. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Now, before we jump into the topic, I'm going to take us on a little bit of a history lesson. In 1961, Professor John McCarthy from Stanford University predicted computing will be packaged as a public utility just as the telephone system. Each subscriber needs to pay only for the capacity he actually uses, but he has access to all programming languages characteristic of a very large system. Certain subscribers might offer service to other subscribers. If you cast your mind back to 2006, when Eric Schmidt from Google introduced a term at an industry conference, which has now become synonymous with the digital world we live in. The term was cloud. Cloud computing has drastically shifted the way we work, the way we buy, and the way we live. I want to ask you all, what was it like in the early stage for you all working across different functions and technology roles to be able to use this new cloud technology and move away from the hard drive and local network model? Nivi, I'll ask you first. When cloud first came into use in the public, what were your feelings around it?
I believe immediately it gave me a sense of expansion of the perimeter. As you know, I work in the cybersecurity space. I would be thinking about how do I protect this very fluid and hybrid environment. But at the same time, the benefits of the cloud, the scale, the agility, the velocity is definitely something that I admired and adopted.
That's very CISO. It's a little bit of wariness, but also excitement. Chrissy, what about you?
Yeah, I actually distinctly remember when I was first introduced to the cloud, because I was just a newly minted project manager working in a state government department who had decided to go on their cloud journey, and finding the concept quite difficult to begin with. I was like, what is this cloud and where is it? Only to find that quite simply it was just another data centre. But I think what I saw as I progressed in my career is in IT, the benefits of cloud very quickly, particularly from when data became such an asset for organisations, and the power that data analytics could provide to organisations was really only realised in the cloud. And I think for me that's where, you know, the beauty of the cloud and what it could do for the business it really cemented the importance of cloud in terms of, you know, your infrastructure environment and your business offerings.
Roberto, what about you?
Yeah, I guess looking back in time, and at that time, actually, I was playing in the software side of the technology industry. I think there was the realization of being able to actually do a lot more without having to wait, in all honesty, right? Back in the day, I mean, I had to go through my infrastructure teams, and if I had specific requirements, I had to go through a whole procurement process and checks and validations just to make sure I get the right resources I needed to work with. The self-serving capability of the cloud, that was something that blew my mind. And as Kristin, as I went on and understood what the cloud was, that's when I decided to leave software engineering and move into cloud infrastructure, right? So the other realization was that it certainly was an infrastructure hosted in a different data center by somebody else. And that prompted my thinking around, okay, who is actually looking after our data? So I would say my current thinking around security got challenged a little bit. And I look at that as potentially, back in my day, a career development option.
Yeah, thank you. And you both sort of touched on this, but there was some kind of resistance. I remember speaking recently with a CEO at a retail group who says she still goes out to all the stores and asks for a paper report. Did any of you encounter any kind of resistance to this new model? Roberto, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, any new concept would have a little bit of ramp up and maturity journey for an organization to go through, right? A couple of the friction points I would say that came with the cloud was the OpEx model when it came to IT budget management. I mean, the fact that anyone could actually get access to infrastructure and just pay with a credit card, right? And everybody was actually saying, okay, well, let's go to the cloud and let's pay it out of our budgets, and suddenly a lot of organizations found themselves having a lot of shadow IT pockets, right? So how do you actually deal with that initial complexity that actually prompted a little resistance? I think the tech industry as well felt threatened. Some players certainly saw the cloud as a threat rather than an opportunity for their business models. But the cloud has proven that it actually filled a need in the IT landscape.
Yeah. And Chrissy, yourself, was there any kind of friction points when you moved to the cloud model that you experienced?
Yeah, without a doubt. And even today, I think I still see this quite a bit, and it's a cultural shift. And you can understand it, right? Particularly for those that have spent their career building on-premise infrastructure. They have to retrain and think differently. It's a new paradigm, the cloud. It's not just a lift and shift. It is really a different way of computing and storage and services. And for IT professionals, in some cases, it's been a big cultural shift for them. For others, they've taken it and run with the baton, definitely. But there is a cultural change. I think also, there's like anything, there's risks and benefits to the cloud, and really understanding that and understanding where you need to apply the cloud, how you need to apply it is key to its success. So you can get plenty of cases where cloud's not successful, and those stories can perpetuate and then become a difficult hurdle to get over with the business. But yeah, some people don't like change, so change is always difficult no matter what it is. Yeah.
What about you, Nivi? What kind of comments do you have around friction to adopt cloud?
Certainly. So just to add to what hasn't been discussed yet is the friction around or the dilemma of losing control. So which model should we select and which type of cloud should we select? Is it private cloud or public cloud? I think there was more adoption of private cloud where there was more regulatory obligations with certain organizations, and there was a lot of reluctance until the point that it was proven that it is a model that is workable. And then the contention around software as a service has its own challenges of visibility issues, but also how we handle the data. And on the other hand, the skills shortage, as Chrissy mentioned, the skills gap in terms of competency to manage and operate that cloud environment once it is delivered in an infrastructure as a service model. were quite challenging for majority of the organizations, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. I want to dive a little bit into that because there are, as you mentioned, different clouds for different purposes. But how do you figure out what's the right cloud for your organisation? I mean, obviously there's security aspects that you need to consider, but what are some of the things you're asking when you're choosing the right cloud model? Chrissy, I might start with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the AFP sits in a relatively unique position compared to your average government department or private business in terms that we have fairly strict security requirements around our infrastructure, whether it be on-premise or in the cloud. And so luckily for us, we have some very prescriptive requirements by the government in terms of the security that is required and the controls that are required around cloud. So basic ones, it must be sovereign and it must be rated up to protected. So that in itself provides some assurity about what we're purchasing from the cloud providers. I think, whether or not you're using a smaller cloud provider or one of the large hyperscalers really depends on what you're trying to achieve from your use of cloud. So it's very much about making sure you're using the cloud for the right reason. I mean, with the 3 to 4 sort of larger hyperscalers, honestly, I think it really is about fit for your business. And really, 1 year it could be one cloud provider that's a leader in a certain type of service, and in 3 to 4 years' time it could be the next. I think you're not really, one is not necessarily better than the other, but your fit with that organisation might be better. So there's a number of reasons. Costing, they're all sort of the same as well. Yeah.
What about within retail? What kind of considerations do you make for your choice of cloud?
Yeah, I mean, operating within the private sector, right? We probably have not as many constraints as the AFP. So, but we still have a duty to consider security and protect our customers' data and certainly our corporate data as well, right? So the fact that the cloud came as hosting applications and infrastructure as somebody else's data centers was probably the first criteria that we needed to check. How are we going to protect our data and our customers' data? But we sort of quickly realized there is a green field for innovation that we wanted to enable, and the cloud was a perfect fit for that, right? And typically those greenfield initiatives are not necessarily, certainly are very high visibility, require a quick turnaround and all that, but are not necessarily that much of a compliance driven, right? So certainly you have your corporate enterprise applications and commitments that you need to have the right questions to see whether the cloud is a good fit for them. But the process that we went through was, we have this greenfield. What can we do to actually, get through that and enable all the benefits of experimentation, being able to have shorten the time to market for our solutions and all that. So that was the first candidate. There was an evolution of the cloud as well, right? So moving from just purely infrastructure to actually services, and even from a security perspective, the shared responsibility model has evolved a little bit, right? So it's an ongoing discussion, to be honest. There are areas of the business that we don't look at the cloud for a solution, but there are some others where we see the fit right away.
Thank you. And education, does that have different considerations?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to start with the different experiences that I had. For example, in Microsoft, it itself was a provider.
Yeah.
And so basically offering all these services, but also had to use those services to test those services internally before offering them. And then when I moved to Vodafone, now TPG, it was a completely different driver, and it is critical infrastructure. So private cloud was something that was adopted for protecting the critical infrastructure and managing it, but everything else, the business applications, the operational tools, were driven by the need, as Chrissy mentioned as well. And when I moved to UNSW, the requirements are variable, I guess, because there's research going on, there are academic needs, there are operational tools. So it's all driven by the shared responsibility model. Basically, what skills do you have? What business needs do you have? How customized is this application that we are talking about? When we go to the micro levels, at a macro level, I think today, every business needs to adopt every kind of cloud service model to meet its needs for a variety of purposes to drive their business efficiency, time to market, scale.
Now, Roberto, you touched on this, of the need for the right things to be operated in the cloud. And compliance does state for a lot of Australian enterprises that they need to have their data onshore. And there have been instances where people have wound back from the cloud and put things back on-prem. Can anyone in the group sort of share where you go, well, this isn't critical to be in the cloud, it doesn't need to be shared, it doesn't need to be accessed? Nivi, did you want to take that question first?
I guess if we go into the technical terms, OECD countries are, as well as through the GDPR type of arrangements, today we can expect a level of security and a kind of framework and certification that we can manage our sensitive data in a variety of countries, different countries. In terms of, like, was that your question? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it is a privacy issue, but it's more, does this need to go to the cloud? I mean, you've got cost considerations there, where that does create an expense for the business. And, you know, you might find the case is, that's a cost that we don't need to wear for this example. Chrissy, did you want to jump on that?
I think for us there's a couple of considerations, and obviously there's the sensitivity and classification. So highly classified, highly sensitive data can't go to the cloud. It's quite simple. Also, I think it's about, I mean, there are latency issues. I think with large amounts of data, sending it up and back from the cloud is not only expensive, but it's also can be slow depending on where you are or where you require that data to go. So, you know, we're sort of seeing the re-emergence of edge computing, particularly, say, for retail is a really good example, where you might have CCTV. You need to very quickly process, you know, whatever's happening, get the information back to the store straight away. The cloud might not be the best solution for that. You may need that edge computing very close to where the data is being captured. So you do need to think about, you know, what the application does, what the needs are for the business, and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, no, 100%, Chrissy. And I probably would throw this on the table and I say the cloud is not necessarily the end for a lot of organizations and for a lot of the scenarios that we have to deal with, right? So edge computing is one, and let's think of an organization that has, for instance, you know, operational distributions around the whole country or extensive geographical areas, including areas where, for instance, you know, connectivity is not necessarily available. So defense, for instance, you know, I mean, would you think of the cloud powering some sort of solution that is dependent for guiding submarines somewhere? Probably not, right? Probably not. So I think one of the things that the cloud has done is evolve from just corporate application hosting into a more broad technology acceptance. But there are still cases and there are still industries that pose a lot of regulations for operating that would roll out the use of cloud, right? And I guess the other point I'm trying to make here is that when we look at the cloud is not the end. The cloud is a means to an end. So if you guys are really looking into, you know, tapping into endless innovation streams, a greenfield architecture that allows you to put together solutions quickly and obtain benefits from, you know, economies of scope and scale, go for it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll just yeah. Sorry, Nivedita, you go.
Sorry, I was just trying to say that within the university, I believe the only constraints that we have when we are, say, restricted from handling sensitive information in the cloud is when we have contractual requirements from the government. So we hold some data for a variety of critical infrastructure organizations, agencies. And other than that, I think we can freely operate, and over the years we have not seen a problem in doing so.
And Chrissy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, conversely though, I mean, there are some things that the cloud can only do that on-premise can't do for you. And for us at the AFP, where we have operations where large amounts of data are collected for an operation, and we need to do analytics and all sorts of things with the data, we really need to ramp up very quickly our compute and our storage for that period of time. When we do it on premise, we have to pay for the servers and the compute and the storage for its life, as opposed to for a period, 3 to 6 month period, when we can then ramp it down again or turn it down again when we're not using it. And so, that benefit is massive for us, like in terms of cost savings, but also being able to having that surge capability when it's required.
Yeah, definitely. Roberto, did you have anything to add?
No, I think like I probably just wrap it up saying like the right cloud for the job, right? So if you are looking at the storage, infrastructure, services, you have a variety of options right now with the providers. And chances are, if you are operating within a specific scenario, like running a power grid, and then you need to interface with like OT infrastructure that is very restricted, critical infrastructure, chances are there is a very niche cloud provider that might be able to help you. So just be mindful. The right cloud for the right job.
And there are a lot of different providers out there. We've kind of set a bit of a background on moving towards the cloud and what the risks were and cost and other sort of considerations. Cloud's definitely allowed people to collaborate more than ever before, and it's allowed us to make some pretty cool stuff. I mean, I'd love to hear from you guys. What is something that you've noticed or built or seen that's been built that you've gone, oh wow, that's amazing, that's innovative? Roberto, I'll start with you. The retail space uses technology really effectively to meet customer needs, but also to understand the customer. What's something you can share that's been an innovation that wouldn't have been possible without cloud?
I guess I'll answer in probably more industry broad conception. First of all, the ability to capture data from the customers, analyze the sentiment almost on real time it has no reference previously, right? So when you go into retail space, whatever that space might mean, you probably are prompted to connect to the Wi-Fi, or maybe there is a Bluetooth beacon that keeps track of your phone. And the ability to analyze real time what you are looking at, where your position in a retail space is, and process that in real time, and maybe give you a suggestion of what you might be able to look at, or give you another option for buying, is just amazing, right? And I found that like a game changer, like that speed. As of late, everybody is talking about AI. AI wouldn't have happened without the power compute that we have these days available on the cloud. I don't necessarily think that every organization is going to run an infrastructure farm to power their AI solutions, but those will be provided by the cloud, right? And as you said, just use it for as long as you need, rather than burying the code of paying for a lifetime of it.
Thank you. And Chrissy, the AFP has an innovation fund, and you've launched 21 projects across 13 different commands, which is quite impressive. Can you share some of the innovations that have come out of that?
Yeah, I mean, the Innovation Fund was set up really specifically particularly for the front line, to bring back ideas to us around what they think would assist them in terms of fighting crime. And because we really see technology as an enabler or a force multiplier in terms of crime fighting. And I think we also, the Innovation Fund also sort of brought forward some really nice non-technology sort of innovations as well. One example of that is the high-risk explosive sniffer dogs that we use. So there was an idea to use canines to go into more dangerous situations to sort of understand whether or not there was a risk of high explosives. Those sorts of things come through the fund, but also our work with the community, so working with, I suppose, young people, teenagers who may be at risk of or have already tried things like cyber hacking, really teaching them and bringing them into the fold, teaching them about ethical hacking and how their skills can be used, I suppose, to help rather than hinder society, things like that. But from an innovation perspective as well, we do quite a lot of work with partners, so large software companies, where we partner with them around innovative ideas. So say, for example, we've done quite a bit of work with Microsoft recently on containerising AI services, so being able to bring AI services back on-premise so that we can use it in a more classified environment. So working with partners to do those sorts of things, but also with our other intelligence agencies, we have a stream that allows us to pull through innovations in the intelligence sort of area into policing. So there's quite a lot of work that's done in those sorts of spaces as well. It's important for us to be on the edge. Criminals can innovate a lot faster than us because they don't have the constraints, and so we do need to sort of try and stay on top of it. But the best way we do that is by partnering both with those on the coalface and then our partners. Yeah,
thank you. Nivi, what about you?
I believe at the university, at the core, research excellence is one of our key mission and objectives. And to be able to excel in research, I believe it is so important that we can continuously experiment, and to be able to provide that platform at the level and scale to be able to do that and safeguard that, we could only do that through the cloud environments. Secondly, when we went into COVID, it was quite a challenging time for the universities because universities gave like a physical campus experience, and now we had to cope with a virtual hybrid or a total digital transformation. And at that time, without the ability of having virtual communications and virtual teaching and being able to share data and no restrictions in doing so, it was only possible through the cloud.
And it was funny, it brings me back to an earlier point in the conversation of that friction. I mean, it was the only way that we could continue working through COVID, but there was friction. I mean, I heard you're on mute more times than I wanted to. But there would also be, from a cybersecurity perspective, you've got to balance the need for a place like a university is where you innovate and create new ideas. So as a technologist, I imagine that'd be pretty exciting. But as a cybersecurity specialist, how do you balance that, keeping the risk and keeping the different risk factors balanced against the need to innovate? What kind of measures are you implementing? Do you have discussions with the research teams? Can you share any of those sort of stories?
Yeah, I believe the model that we used was very risk-focused and based on threat modeling. So we have used, over the last 4 years, a FAIR-based quantitative risk assessment where we model all of our threat scenarios. And based on the military concept of kill chain, we have tried to understand which environment or which use case requires what kind of security controls, and then layer them up. That was one of the key approaches that we have taken, but trying to understand what are our most strategic environments and what are the gaps in terms of the environment level controls, the application level controls, was very important, because at the university you have a variety of models. You cannot achieve centralization. So when you have a model where the infrastructure is delivered by a central team, IT team, and then a researcher picks it up and modifies the whole thing, then you need to have a very innovative approach actually to be able to say that, okay, you can experiment with, do anything in this guarded environment with all of these guardrails, but with public data or anonymized data. But if you have to handle sensitive data or private data, this is where you land.
Yeah. Roberto, what about you? What's keeping you up at night when you're thinking about cloud?
Oh, well, being on the newspaper for the wrong reasons. I won't name names, but yeah, I mean, look, I think when we discuss cloud security, and as part of the evolution of the cloud, I think we shouldn't actually just understand that cloud security is infrastructure or network security. It's actually the full stack, right? So you're talking about infrastructure, certainly, networks, you're talking applications, you're talking your providers, you're talking your partnerships, the way you deal with the whole package, right? That can actually feel overwhelming, and it does feel overwhelming. But having a position based on risk and the ability to qualify and quantify what the risk means to your business helps you actually prioritize where your efforts should go, right? Data protection is always paramount. So a lot of the cloud security activities that we do is just to make sure that data can only be accessed by the people that should access, and that triggers a lot of conversations in the sense of changing mindsets. The cloud actually does a very good job at surfacing that technology, people, and processes are the three fundamental pieces of anything that we do within the IT space, right? So technology is not much of a problem. You need to deal with people and change their ways of working and mindsets. That takes a little time. And as you adopt the cloud and a different operation model, your processes need to change. So I would take it as have a risk-based posture, prioritize based on that, and then change the way you operate.
Thank you. And Chrissy, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, cloud's interesting. Roberto talked about, the shared responsibility sort of model. And part of the way I look at it is that if I look at my team having to manage an on-premise environment for the organisation, and I look at AWS or Google or Microsoft doing it for me, and I see the millions or billions of dollars that those large hyperscalers are able to invest into their business that I would never even get close to. I sort of feel like their ability to invest in security and their ability to invest in the newest infrastructure and latest technology is far greater than mine. So it's not a bad place to hedge your bets. And also, I look at it also from their perspective and sort of say, do they want their name on the front of a newspaper as well, alongside of ours, in terms of some sort of security breach? Absolutely not. So they have a vested interest to provide the best service possible. So that to me is reassuring. That said, though, to your point, it really is a risk discussion. And a benefits discussion, and really understanding what that is and whether it's right for you and your organisation and that particular part of the business. But I think that the power, the power that the hyperscale organisations can bring to both innovation but also security, and working in partnership with them, working closely with those providers is really important to make sure they understand your needs. And you can actually influence them. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. On the hyperscaler thing, though, we did actually see the case within the last year where a hyperscaler did lose their sort of connectivity cloud for one of the super funds.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is safe to say these people have some amazing experts and minds, but if you are putting all your eggs in that basket, there is a bit of risk there. And the vendor landscape has multiplied for different solutions that tie into your cloud. How do you manage those conversations with extensive vendor networks? Did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, a similar but different example is the CrowdStrike one, right?
Yeah.
So that one was interesting because, you know, a whole lot of organisations who had chosen CrowdStrike as part of their environment, not connected in any way, those organisations, but all connected in the way that they had the massive outage. And I think what that teaches us, and it's the same with, you know, putting all your eggs in one basket with one vendor or one provider, is that you do need options. That's what your business continuity plan is, that's what your DR plan is, and that never changes regardless of what your choices are. So I sort of think you need that very clear governance and that framework around business continuity and disaster recovery in place when you're making those decisions. Because even if all your eggs are in one basket, or you just happen to be coupled with a whole lot of other people in that basket just because you all made the same choice, it doesn't really matter. What matters is what you have in place in case of the worst possible thing happening, because it will. Just like COVID, just like 9/11, these events have proven that they will happen. So you need to be prepared either way.
Nivi, did you have any?
Well, Chrissy almost said everything that I wanted to say, to be honest. But yes, the first thing that comes to my mind is business continuity. These events have really taught us a lot of lessons, and basically the UniSuper downtime taught us a lot of lessons, and it's all related to how you've built your resilience. Do you make decisions on the right types of architectures? Because that happens at a very ground level, and you know, senior management needs to be very cognizant of that. And previously, senior management would rely on the IT folks and the architects to be able to make that decision. Today, it's very important to actually lift that up to a business process and service continuity construct, rather than it just being a disaster recovery type of infrastructure level decision.
Yeah, Roberto, what about you?
Yeah, I think the discussions around business continuity are certainly valid, and I wish they were surfaced and discussed more when people actually discuss cloud adoption, right? Because there is always, granted or not, but there is kind of a bit of an expectation that just because I'm going with a cloud provider, they are going to take care of things, right? And I don't need to consider the additional risks the cloud or my dependency on the cloud are going to introduce into my normal business operations, right? But the good thing is we have options, right? So if dependency with a specific cloud provider, from a risk perspective, for your business continuity plans, you deem that you need to look as a fallback option, there are options, right? Multi-cloud comes into that discussion. It does bring a lot of extra complexity, but as Chrissy says, I mean, the whole cloud discussion is around the benefits it's going to provide versus everything else that you need to balance out. So I'll wrap it up there.
I like that sort of comment on multiple options. I mean, for us, half our office use Apple laptops, half use Surfaces. And for us Surface users, we said, sweet, we're finishing up at 3:30 today. Moving ahead into the future, we're seeing, you know, technology advancement coming back to the microchip level, with quantum becoming more and more of a conversation. But cloud is, you know, underpins so much business in Australia and the world. What's next? I mean, you touched on AI before. What's next with cloud? What are the possibilities that are still left out there that you want to chase down? Nivi, at uni, I mean, you must be exposed to some really interesting concepts. Can you share sort of what's future?
I guess we have not achieved the optimal level of automation. Automation clubbed with AI and orchestration are some of the things that the industry is yet to reach the full maturity. But then the upcoming commercialization of quantum technologies really keeps me up at night, because organizations need to start to plan around what will happen when, at the least, the encryptions break. So all the reliance on your data that is being transferred in transit, it's currently not exposed, but what will happen? And the one thing that I can think of is what Chrissy mentioned, again, hyperscale providers that we can bank on, because we know that those organizations are investing in that kind of thing. If I think of like my massive set of applications or legacy applications that don't have the level of security that it needs today, can we bring them up to speed and apply a new type of cryptography to those applications? Probably the answer is no. So we would have to think about what is our roadmap today to be able to invest in those relationships with the vendors, or a plan of what are those applications that we are going to invest in at that point.
Yeah, interesting. Chrissy, what about you?
Yeah, I think, you know, the thing that sort of springs to mind to me is actually less about technology and more about people. I sort of feel like we are moving from a space of, you know, I suppose a singular path or a singular idea of where we're moving, and we're doing a cloud transformation or we're working on AI. It's sort of fairly singular. I think we're getting to a point where people are going to have to be able to hold two ideas or two pathways in their head at the same time and be able to work within that somehow to be able to get the job done. I think everything starts to get far more complex, and the speed that we have to adapt is going to become faster, particularly for our technologists. And so the challenge for me is I worry less about what the future brings from technology, because you know, people that work at universities and hyperscalers will sort of just bring that commercially to me in some ways. It's the people part of it that I sort of go, how do I prepare? How do I prepare my staff? How do I prepare or understand the next generation coming through to take on that technology and manage it responsibly to get the outcomes at the pace that it comes? That sort of blows my mind a little bit. Part of me sort of goes, I'll probably be retired, so it'll be okay. But I do think about it a bit, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it comes back to I need a paper report. No, you can self-serve that on your laptop. Roberto, future thinking?
Yeah, now you guys are in trouble. Look, I think, and this is more of a personal view on things and technology in general, but I think the cloud is going to keep evolving, and it's going to provide, you know, the businesses and all amazing opportunities there. But I'm probably taking a little bit your people-centric approach. I'm just waiting to see, like, you know, the wearable devices and every single personal device actually forming a cloud of its own, right? So I just think of the day where my kids are going to go somewhere and they are in trouble, and they don't have to ring me back because their device will alert a friend or a first responder service, and they will just automatically and seamlessly get the services that they need, right? And the same probably can be said about medicine, right? Like certainly we have operating robots at this stage, but as they scale up the introduction of that, there will be a need probably to have medical experts all across the globe, looking after a patient in a completely remote geographical location and saving lives without actually being there. And you could only have that if you have a cloud of some sort, right? So As I said, sorry for
No,
going in trouble, but yeah, the sky is open in that sense.
I really
I
like.
would also like to add that these days and the future we have is of AI agents. When both of you talked about the people aspect, it made me think how many jobs it will replace. It brings both an opportunity and a risk to the industry. And today, the use of AI agents and the commercialization of AI agents is growing exponentially. So it will do something, some type of transformation that has never been seen before and never been experienced before. So it kind of scares me, but I'm also very positive about the opportunities myself, trying to innovate around how can we translate or transform our current repeatable processes through AI agents, and we can focus on our staff on further learning and delivery of more valuable valuable delivery based on their skill set.
I often hear from a lot of CIOs, we're implementing AI. Oh, what are you going to do with it? Oh, we're going to streamline processes and improve things so that we've got more time. And I always ask, time to do what? What else are your team working on? That, I mean, for some people, going to work and doing that mundane process is fine by them. But for some people, there is that more out there that they will have time to do that. For our final question, the young cloud professional just about to start out on their journey, what advice do you give for them, and what can you share with them that's exciting? And this is a great thing to look into and develop. Maybe I'll start with you again.
I guess if you're talking about a cloud professional, I would assume that they would gain some qualifications and academic exposure of cloud environments. I think the future is of code, so I would advise them to gear up with learning more code and a little bit of algorithm to understand AI. Like I said, the future is AI and quantum computing. So I don't know what it will bring, but definitely these skill sets would equip them to be able to sustain in those roles in the future.
Chrissy?
Yeah, I think it's a curious mindset. I think would be the thing that I would always sort of encourage, particularly in any young person starting off in a career, to be curious, but also to sort of hold strong opinions, but lightly held. So what I mean by that, like, always open yourself up to the concept that you could be maybe wrong, or that there could be a different way of doing things. I think what interests me is that, you know, to your point about code, we've now got things like Copilot that basically will turn natural language into code and is taking a lot of those traditional skills. So for me, it is really about, again, it's a speed thing about how quickly people can see a different application. To think broadly around this particular technology is being applied here, how could it be applied differently to solve a different problem? So really, I think that's, to be successful in this sort of technical sort of future, you really need to be able to think broadly and think quickly, but also to have a really curious mindset.
Yeah. Roberto?
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid. You know, the pace of innovation on the cloud side of things can feel daunting. Every 6 months there is a new thing that actually meant that whatever you did now has to be revised. So, and even for seasoned professionals, it's oh, here we go again, right? Kind of experience. But I would say don't be afraid. Ask questions. Be curious, and along with being curious, keep on learning. And if you feel strongly about something and you have an idea and you want to make it a reality, never in life has been as easy as it is today. That probably get some people together working on it, get some infrastructure that will power your idea, and get it out. So the ability to the access and the ability to be more entrepreneurial these days is way more than ever before, right? So if you want to go that path, don't be afraid. But if you want to play in technology, keep learning. Don't be afraid. Ask questions. And don't forget that every single new shiny thing relies on a very good old principle. So focus on the principles. They will never fail you.
Thank you.
That also brings to mind the concern amongst the universities across the world is the students are more dependent on these applications, say for example ChatGPT, and that is leading to more passive learning and creating so much dependency. For example, something as simple as being able to write. But if you're using ChatGPT to write, you're not actually practicing that vocabulary. And then when you are in a conversation, you look like a completely different person. So there's a risk with that as well. Developing of your own personality and your communication skills are very important because that technology is not going to do the job of influencing and negotiating and all of those things.
Don't forget to be human.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Right? Don't forget to
the
be
point.
No, definitely. And I mean, there is a lot of homogenous marketing material out there at the moment, and it is the stuff that stands out. You can tell somebody's put their nous into it. Are there any other comments you guys want to share before we wrap up, or any other areas that we want to touch on? We haven't really gone too far into infrastructure, but do
Well,
we
cloud
want
is
Yeah,
just
cloud is infrastructure.
one form of infrastructure, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, actually, I do want to ask that. Legacy tech, Chrissy, you've worked in a bank before. I mean, those server rooms must have been very, very warm and a nightmare. What kind of transformation to your hardware and your infrastructure did cloud bring in, and was that a relief?
Is it? I mean, yeah, I mean, in terms of keeping me up at night, I do like the thought of somebody else taking responsibility for my data centre. I don't appreciate that 3 o'clock in the morning the air conditioner's broken and the diesel generator didn't have any diesel in it, and so it's overheating, and so on. So yeah, I mean, cloud does take some of that worry away. In terms of legacy, yeah, I mean, there's nothing like a burning bridge to make you move. And sometimes vendors help with that when they sort of say we're no longer supporting this software or licenses on premise and we only do cloud. It's frustrating, but it's nothing like somebody pushing you to sort of address an issue or providing your executive with a very clear reason as to why they need to invest in removing legacy. So, legacy I think is the bane. It is the ball and chain that we all, as CTOs or infrastructural CIOs, pull around with us. So the less we can lessen that ball and chain around our ankles, the better. But it's not simple and it's not easy either. No, I do love a bit of somebody else taking responsibility for a burning server.
No, definitely. And I mean, legacy code, like COBOL. How many people here can write COBOL efficiently? There we go. But I do remember speaking to a bank, and one of their systems, it was for a payment thing, and they had to give some guy a call in New Zealand to fix it up, and I think the cost associated was pretty big. So maybe to the point I made earlier of, homogenous marketing, but if it can homogenize code, maybe that's not the worst thing, and we're not reliant on these outdated legacy systems that nobody knows how to fix. Maybe
Absolutely.
Last sort of thoughts, any other areas you want to touch on?
I think the same thing, I would like to answer that question about the relief. Yes, it's a massive relief for someone from my background, not having to manage the risk of out of support, out of life systems, the patching, which is now auto patching, what a relief. And the ability to, or the visibility of the entire cloud environment is one of the biggest pluses that I would say that we derive out of cloud security posture management tools, where I can audit, I can look at the compliance, which I never had the access of all the environments and the physical environments. That is another thing. And for businesses, I guess, the ability to manage and automatically manage the scale up and down and the finances, the capacity and the availability of systems, and to be able to make those decisions on how much redundancy you need and the cost effectiveness is a big relief for all businesses, I believe.
Totally. Roberto?
Yeah, no, I think the cloud is going to continue evolving, and it's going to be less and less infrastructure and more services, right? So that actually opens up opportunities, right? I find myself as an IT professional playing in the cloud space that I have to deal less and less with network issues, which is a good thing. But I find myself actually dealing more and more with partners from a service brokering and management perspective, right? Which is probably a bit of a role that never existed before. So it does open opportunities, and I think we're going to see a lot of growth in that particular area as organizations use and take up more cloud services, right? FinOps, for instance, now you can see that there is a demand for FinOps people. But when you look at FinOps and what FinOps is just good old cost management, right? Applied to the cloud with a few lenses and nuances. And yeah, I think it's going to keep opening opportunities for everyone.
Definitely. Well, that is all that we have time for today. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Common Factor, Cloud and Infrastructure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.